recorded. We will share the slides and all the materials that you'll see today after the meeting. So let's talk about some quick USBE updates for just a second. Just a couple of quick reminders from me and from Val Murdoch. The Title I application, as you know, is open in Utah grants. That is due on Friday, November 26th by 5 p.m. So if you haven't done your initial submission at that point, the Utah grant system will close the application at 5 o'clock. So you need to make sure those are in there. That will be your initial submission. We'll review those as quickly as we can. If your application happens to be sent back for revision, you don't have to have it done and revised by the 26th. That's just the deadline for the initial submission. So as of this morning, we've received 30 LEA Title I applications. 21 of those have been approved. We have a few that are in revision. One of the things that we've noticed as we've been reviewing the applications, one of the reasons that some LEA applications are being sent back for revision is that you are either, you may have schools that are target assistance program and you're marking them as school-wide programs. Or you may have schools that were identified for targeted support and improvement under ESSA, and you haven't indicated that on the building eligibility page. So if you'll pay attention to some of those kinds of things, then chances are your application will be submitted, we can quickly approve it, and then you can start drawing down your funding. You won't be able to draw down any of your fiscal year 22 funding until you have that approved application. Val Murdoch, our really wonderful Title I monitoring specialist, provided a wonderful video training on how to complete the desktop monitoring instrument, the DMI. That is due on Wednesday, December 1st. And Val indicates that 14 of the Cycle 2 instruments have been submitted, 12 of those are approved. 14 annual core instruments have been submitted, and 13 of those have been approved. So please keep those two deadlines in mind as you work on those two documents. I also want to make an announcement today. As you know, for the last several years, we've had some issues with data, partly due to the pandemic, partly due to the fact that we had some irregularities in our testing with the vendor that was selected a couple of years ago. So we had to go back and look at old data because we don't have any data from 2020 data is not being used at all for accountability purposes, but we had 2017 data, 2018 data, and we had a data steward pull some 2019 data for us. So we looked at that, and we're going to award the Category 1 ESEA Distinguished Award this year will go to Salina Elementary School in Sevier School District. Salina was either in the top 5% of all Title I schools in the state or the top 10% of Title I schools across 2017, 18, and 19. The principal there is Jordan Cranbull, and the superintendent is Dr. Cade Douglas. Category 3 is exemplary progress with multilingual learners. So our wonderful Title III specialist, Dr. Christelle Estrada, worked with our data and assessment team, and she reviewed the WIDA access data and looked at schools that had made really good progress on the WIDA access in moving their multilingual learners up through the levels. So this year, the school receiving that award will be Mountain View Elementary in Salt Lake City School District. They have a new principal this year, Jason Finch. The superintendent is Dr. Timothy Gadsden, and the principal that was there prior to Mr. Finch is Chelsea Maloof. And Chelsea moved into a district position this year, but we also want to recognize Dr. Malouf's efforts at Mountain View in achieving that award. So those two schools will each receive a $15,000 supplementary Title I award so that they can attend the National ESEA Conference, which will be in New Orleans in February. Next year, we hope that we'll be back on a regular data cycle and we'll be able to go back to the way that we were identifying schools and identifying schools that are eligible and then having them submit an application to be reviewed for receiving those awards. I'd like to introduce, we have a new parent and family engagement specialist, and I don't see her here in the meeting just yet. I thought she was going to join us this morning.
I'm here.
Oh, she's here. You are here, Jessica. So, Jessica, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? I didn't see your name there. I apologize.
No, you're fine. Thank you for making time for me today. My name is Jessica Callan. I'm the new family and community engagement specialist. And I am really excited to get started working with you all and see how I can best support your efforts engaging within your schools and your districts.
Yeah, we're very excited to have Jessica on board. I think some of you are aware that Cheryl Ellsworth, who was in this position before, left USBE a couple of months ago, and she's now working for United Way. But Jessica brings with her a great deal of expertise working with families and working with community organizations, supporting students and families who are refugees. So we're really excited about having her on our team. These are our learning intentions for today. First of all, we want you to start to develop a shared understanding of what the ESSA resource equity provisions are, and then learn about how USBE worked with people at the national level, including the Region 15 Comprehensive Center at Wested, in designing this initial process. And then what we really want to do is gather your feedback to ensure that what we have thought about is actually going to be something that will be meaningful and helpful to you in your LEAs and schools. So the Region 15 Comprehensive Center, there are a number of centers across the country that are funded federally through the U.S. Department of Education. And their mission and goal is to serve groups of states, and they provide technical assistance and support to states across the country that are all grappling with similar kinds of challenges and issues that need to be implemented. So the things that they've been focusing on are equitable teaching and learning, standards assessment and accountability, and then overall systems improvement. So you'll see we are in Region 15, which includes California, Nevada, Utah, and Arizona. And we have a wonderful team of educators and people with a wide variety of expertise that serve in that regional center that have been helping us with a number of projects that we've been working on in the state. So I'm going to turn the time over to them now. And the first person we'll hear from is Tia Taylor. She's kind of been the lead on the resource allocation framework we've been working on. And joining Tia, we also have Ann Hearn from the Region Center, Corey Cornett, and Erica Screslet. So we will turn the time over to Tia, and she'll take it away.
All right, thank you so much, Becky. And we are also excited to be here. I think that our team will all agree that you did a fabulous job of introducing the comprehensive centers, and we might just have to capture your recording to share that out for us. So thank you so much. All right, so before we get started on sharing the design of the resource allocation reviews, we thought we would provide some grounding on what it is we mean when we talk about equitable resource allocation. So when sharing this framework, we always start with setting our intention for this work. And we believe that in order for this to be successful and for meaningful change to truly occur, it's really important for us to reorient our planning mindset and to shift from planning for compliance to planning for performance. With the tremendous flexibilities that our federal funds have to offer, as well as our state funds that are slowly starting to transition to become more flexible as well, we are able to design and fund programs in ways we have never been allowed to before. And in essence, I like to say that the money no longer tells us what to do, but rather we get to tell the money what to do. So one critical element that we find helpful to embrace these funding flexibilities is to understand the difference between basis versus purpose. So the basis of our funding, and if you want to, thank you so much, Becky. The basis of our funding is a highly technical accounting term and function. It's the way in which we recognize our revenues and expenditures in our accounting systems and are able to report back to the states and feds and more importantly, our stakeholders, what we've been doing with the money that we've been receiving. Then when we move on to understanding the purpose of that funding, when we take away all of the ed code numbers and the ed code letters and all of the words, in essence, all of that funding is intended to improve outcomes for all of our students, and with certain funds being generated and focused on the outcomes for our student groups that need additional supports. So Title I being a great example of that, right? The basis of that funding is those that qualify for our free and reduced price meals. However, the purpose of that funding is to improve outcomes for all of our low performing students in our Title I schools. So again, the basis being that the free and reduced price lunch counts, but the purpose to improve outcomes. So when we're planning to allocate those resources, we start by assessing the needs of our students as well as our staff. Not in isolation, mind you. We want to do this together as a district-wide team or a school-wide leadership team or whoever it is that we need to collaborate with in understanding and identifying those needs in order to have a better idea of those evidence-based strategies that we want to select in order to design our programs and services for our students. Once we've selected those evidence-based strategies and designed out our programs and services, we can then allocate our available resources to support those programs and services. And we'll often start with our base funding and then move on to allocating our supplemental funding and then our specialized funds, as you'll see on the next slide there. And essentially, we're starting with, again, the basic program, that general education that we're offering and that is intended to meet the needs of all of our students, and supplementing those programs and services throughout our system and across our districts and schools. So prior to our work in Utah, we have been fortunate to work with schools and districts across the nation. And many of us have actually worked in school systems ourselves or school districts ourselves. And we've had the pleasure of helping them think about how to strategically allocate those resources to maximize their use. And after the first few sessions that we did with them, a lot of the feedback was, Tia, we need a visual for this work, or we need an analogy. So what we've come up with is what you see on the screen is this equity-driven resource allocation framework. And the analogy that we like to use is baking a pie. So in order to know the type of pie that we are going to bake, we need to know what our students want, and need. And in order to do that, we do our comprehensive needs assessment. This is the first initial phase that we do for any allocation practice that we are going to embark on. And this helps us to, you see on the screen that we're looking at our student needs, but we always advocate that we also need to know and understand what our staff needs in order to be successful in meeting our student needs. So once we've identified our needs, we then first allocate for the basic needs of our educational program. So that's what we see represented here in the blue box in the center. And this is the foundation in which we operate all of our entire system, whether it's a large system or a small system. This is the foundation, or what in our analogies becomes the crust. And this is what we would also consider to be an equal allocation. Everyone gets the same amount in this scenario here. And then we move on to allocating for our evidence-based strategies, right? Building out our multi-tiered systems of support, or whatever it is our students and our staff need in order to be successful in our context. So beginning with that universal supports, what will the majority of our students need in order to be successful? This, in our analogy, becomes the filling in our pie, and is what is served to all of our students, regardless of where they're at in our system. And then we begin allocating out for our supplemental, designing and allocating for our supplemental supports based on that, and then to our specialized supports. So in this analogy, our supplemental supports is the ice cream that goes with the pie that we are serving to all of our students. And then the specialized supports are whatever topping that goes with the pie and the side that we are serving. So we're not designing or creating or allocating funds out to random, programs and services, but rather supplementing and supporting what it is we are serving all of our students throughout our system. This helps us do a few things. It helps us maximize our resources, right? We aren't duplicating efforts or we're duplicating programs, and it enables us to blend and braid our resources in a more efficient manner as we're moving through trying to generate equitable resource allocations. So the final piece of feedback that we get is always that, well, Tia, you should have brought us some pie. And I'm going to say, I'm so sorry, I can't bring you pie, but I would offer that Thanksgiving is coming up. So when you, I don't know about you, but we always have an abundance of pie at my house. So take a minute to, as you're eating some of that pie, to just think about the experience of that and how all of that goes together and blends together. And as we're working towards creating and designing for addressing resource inequities within our system, that you think about that experience and the experience that we want to have for all of our students as we're moving forward in this great work. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Leslie to kick us off, and she's going to share a little bit about the provisions that are behind the work that the Utah team has been doing. So, Leslie.
Tough to follow that, but we will. As far as pie, I think school improvement is the topping. It's a supplemental support. So on the next slide, in 2015, when Elementary and Secondary Education Act was reauthorized as ESSA, there were specific requirements that the SEA must make some identifications. We'll talk about that. And then also periodically review the resource allocations at the LEA level to support school improvement. And we need to do that in LEAs where a significant number of schools are identified for CSI, both low graduation rate as well as overall performance, and in a significant number of schools that are implementing targeted support and improvement plans. So we'll go into more detail here. In the comprehensive support and improvement world, oh, okay, we can go there.
Sorry.
This is the more vision, it's okay.
Let me go back. There we go.
Thanks. So as you know, if schools on an LEA are identified for comprehensive support and improvement, they develop and implement an improvement plan. And in that plan, the school need to identify resource inequities, okay, which may include a review of the LEA and school level budgeting and be addressed through the implementation of that plan. Similarly, in TSI schools, the LEA, the SEA on our end, we Tell the LEA which schools are TSI, and then the LEA guides those schools to create a targeted support and improvement plan for the student groups for which they were identified. And this is a more of a visual representation of our requirements under ESSA, our responsibilities, the outcomes that we're looking for. So at the state level, we review these resource allocations so that we can support school improvement. Like Tia said, not to check off a box, not for compliance, but how do we improve performance and the outcomes for kids at the school level. I think I've covered, thank you. So the primary objective of this RAR, as we're affectionately calling it, is to generate discussion that enables the LEAs and schools to create connections between their identified needs, the evidence-based strategies they're using, and the ways they're allocating resources equitably.
So let's talk for a minute about what the RAR is and what it isn't. And I want to go back to something that as Tia was presenting that overall map, and she was talking about the pie, and she mentioned the comprehensive needs assessment. So for the past 2 or 3 years, USBE has been engaged with some LEAs in developing a consolidated comprehensive needs assessment. And we had some LEAs that piloted that needs assessment a couple of months ago, and they provided us with really wonderful feedback on how that tool worked for them and what could be improved and changed. And that work has been going on under the brilliant leadership of our Assistant Superintendent, Darren Nilsson. Darren is working now with our IT department as part of the USIMS data. They're going to pull all the data systems together eventually, and we have some funding from the legislature to do that. So that comprehensive needs assessment will then become available to LEAs. And the exciting thing about that is it will encompass needs assessments for the federal programs and almost all of the state programs as well. So you will no longer be asked to do a needs assessment for digital teaching and learning, and a separate needs assessment for trust lands, and a separate needs assessment for your title funding. So it's going to be a really wonderful tool, and we're grateful for the LEAs that participated in helping us design that, as well as our fabulous Region 15 colleagues. They are amazing thought partners. Then another piece of that will correlate with that is the resource allocation review. And then the third piece that Superintendent Nilsson is now starting to work on is a framework for a consolidated plan. And this is going to be the really exciting piece because, again, this plan will encompass all of these other separate plans that LEAs and schools are being required to do currently. So he has been working with our state legislators and the legislative fiscal analysts, the Office of the Legislative Auditor General, who a couple of years ago did an audit and reported back to USBE as well as back to the legislature that there were a lot of burdens being placed on our local education agencies. Because every time the legislature, starts a new program and funds it, there's always a plan requirement. And often there's a needs assessment requirement. So it's trying to pull all of that together. And so in the future, we're looking at a more seamless system that will really support LEAs in allocating their resources in a meaningful, intentional manner and really supporting the individual needs at the building level. So a RAR is just a process to help us ensure that our students have equitable access. And you know that we've talked in these meetings for several years now about the statutory purpose of Title I, and that is to ensure that students have equitable opportunities for a high quality education and that we are closing achievement gaps. And we bring that up at every one of these meetings. That's what we're talking about. That's what our title funds are meant to do. So we're looking at trying to help LEAs make meaningful changes, intentional decisions, especially to support their low performing schools and raise all of those students, all of those student groups up, all of those schools up. And so it's a tool that it works in conjunction with school improvement to support that continuous cycle of ongoing improvement at the system level, at the state, local, and school site level. It's not a compliance measure. It's not punitive. It's not a performance review. It's not really a planning session. It's just a way to discuss and talk about how resources, including fiscal, human, and other resources, are being allocated to support that continuous improvement cycle. So I know you've seen multiple diagrams that talk about equality versus equity. So in this example, we have 4 different individuals, but they were all given the same bicycle, right? So it was equitable. They all received the same bicycle, but it doesn't really meet their individual needs. But if we look at equity, what we try to do is provide that bicycle that really meets the needs of that individual and allows them to be successful in achieving their goal of riding that bicycle. And so those bicycles have all been modified to meet the individual needs of those individual students, so to speak. So at this point in time, I'm going to turn the time over to Val, and she's going to talk to you about what we've engaged in over the last couple of years in developing and beginning to design this process.
Thanks, Becky. So you'll notice on this slide that the RAR design team has drawn from a variety of expertise and perspectives throughout the USBE. You might notice that there are people with financial operations experience, data and statistics experience, as well as school leadership, student support, school improvement, and some of the ESEA title programs. And we're hoping that this serves kind of as an overview or a precursor of what LEA teams may look like with the vast experience in a holistic approach. In the next slide, you'll see we just finished finalizing, we'll call it a draft, of this RAR process and the protocols. And we'll take a deeper dive into the protocols today. In December, just coming right up, we'll be piloting the RAR process with a few LEAs. And then in the springtime, implementing the RAR for your use. In the next slide, you'll see that the script has kind of been flipped. We've been starting with the SEA in the upper left-hand corner and going kind of diagonally down to the school. But in this graphic, we wanted to represent that this process ultimately supports the school. So each of the parts of the system, as Becky referred to it, is doing its own internal review and then working with another part of the process to engage in an external review. And it's this combination of looking within and having people from outside looking with us that helps us look at data maybe with new insight and not just the way we've always utilized data. I forget, Becky, is this you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll take these next few slides. So we're going to kind of look at a high-level overview of the process. And then we're going to go into a little bit of deeper dive into task 3 of this process, which is really where we need your feedback. So you see the objective there is to generate discussion. Like we said, it's not punitive. It's not meant to be just a compliance check off, but it's to generate discussion that helps LEAs and schools create connections between the needs that they've identified and then selecting evidence-based strategies and practices to address those needs, and then looking at how resources, human, fiscal, and other resources are allocated to support the plan that will address those identified needs. And we're looking to address any inequities, and the overall goal of this is always to improve student outcomes. So every student has that equitable access. We're closing achievement gaps between student groups. So we start here again with our needs of our students. We then find evidence-based strategies, practices, interventions that will address those needs. We allocate resources so that we can implement these strategies. And then our goal, again, is the improved outcomes. So we have these planning steps. So again, we have this comprehensive needs assessment that has gone through a pilot phase and will, soon be rolled out to LEAs as a tool that they can use. And we're not looking to LEAs to do that process every single year. It will be like a multi-year thing. So you might do the needs assessment 1 year, and then you'll kind of refer back to that for the next 2 or 3 years before you would do it again. So you have the needs assessment, again, selecting those evidence-based strategies. Then you develop a plan to meet these needs. You allocate the resources, and then you're going to, of course, do monitoring and adjusting throughout that process to ensure that the evidence-based practices and strategies you're implementing are really meeting those needs and leading to these improved outcomes. And so you'll adjust and monitor as needed. So task 1 is really a task that will take place within our USBE internal team. And so we will review data at the LEA and school level. LEAs, once they have done a comprehensive needs assessment, will have a summary of what the LEA team decided were areas that their LEA team wanted to focus on. We'll look at that data in task 2, and then in task 3, which again is where we're going to focus today, will be a discussion with the LEA in the school that will be facilitated. And so we're going to take you through some prompts today that we've drafted to see if you think they're the correct prompts in helping LEAs and schools think about how they're allocating their resources. And then task 4 is just sort of a summary of the whole process. So this is where we're going to focus today, is on our draft prototype of task 3. So this would be a discussion between a team from USBE with LEA and school leadership. And we'll look at those initial discussion prompts. And again, here's the objective, which we're looking at needs, addressing those needs with evidence-based strategies, resource allocation, and then addressing any inequities that we find during that process with the overall goal of improving student outcomes. And then we have some supplemental discussion prompts that we'll talk about, what are the needs of the teachers and the students? Are you working with very experienced teachers in a particular building, or are there a lot of teachers early in their career that might need additional support? How do we select those strategies? And I think in March, there's a wonderful team from WestEd that will be coming in, and they've developed some really great processes and flow charts that take you through how to really effectively identify evidence-based strategies and practices to meet your specific needs. Okay, the resource allocation, and then again, there's the summary. And again, we talked about it's a cyclical kind of a process, right? We're in a continuous improvement cycle. So, we'll cycle back through these steps on a recursive basis and with that goal of continuous improvement. And you're aware that, a year ago, Tracy Van Deventer joined the USBE team. She has great experience as a school and district leader in leading school improvement efforts and is now the director of the USBE Center for Continuous School Improvement. And her school improvement team right now consists of Dr. Max Lang and Leslie Evans, and then Jessica Callan, who is also joining that team as the Family and Community Engagement Specialist. Are we ready for a break? Or do you want to continue for a few minutes?
We are quite a bit ahead of schedule. So
yeah, we're ahead of schedule.
So in the chat that people want to take a little bit of a break. So
okay,
go ahead and do that. Oh, and then also continue. I'll let you decide, Becky.
Yeah, because we planned this break to be more at around 9:30, but the next segment, let me just tell you what the next segment. In the next segment, we'll be turning time over to Corey Cornett from the Comprehensive Center, and he's going to set up the processes for the breakout rooms, and then we'll be moving into the breakout sessions. So Corey, what are your thoughts? Do you think we should go ahead, or would you like to take a break before you begin that breakout segment?
I think it would be either way. What works for you. We are good to keep going, but if folks would like to take a quick stretch break, I think we also have capability once we break into breakout sessions. I think it's also possible that folks can also, stand up, stretch, grab a snack or water or whatever during the breakouts as we're working through as well. So that's an option too that folks can exercise. So really up to the group.
Okay, I can't see the, now let me look at the chat. I don't know how many people are saying what. Do you have questions at this point too, before we break or move into the next segment? What questions are you thinking about right now as you've kind of seen this big kind of bird's eye view of this process?
I don't see any questions, Becky, but I wanted you to know that 3-1 right now, we have a continue vote in our chat. So
okay, we'll just go ahead then. So Corey, I'm going to go ahead and we will turn the time over to you.
Thank you so much, Becky. It's great to be here. And as I go, folks are now starting to drop some questions in. So I think my Region 15 colleagues can grab those and make sure that we don't lose those as we move through our discussion of how we're going to do feedback. It's a daunting task, right? When you look at a group of 5 people and ask, what's your opinion? To look at a group of, well, I'm looking at now on our Zoom, it says 68, and asking for your opinion is even more challenging. But we've developed a way today to wrap up a meaningful discussion regarding what you're seeing on the screen. So just like Tia shared with you earlier about compliance and performance, and it's really not an or. What's really great about this is it's an and, it's a both, it's a yes. And so the discussion today that we're wanting to facilitate with you will be to think about all of the things that you're seeing on the screen. So we're asking you to think about the compliance part, but we're also asking you to think about the students. And again, what this all boils down to, the outcomes. What does this look like in your schools? And so as we move to the next slide, you'll see that, we'll go there. Thank you so much. The objective for today, what we really want to accomplish for us is a discussion, and this is where we want your voice. We want for you to raise your voice, to use those fingers on that chat, that Zoom chat, and because we are going to be in small groups. We're going to break out into 4 different teams. Or if you want to turn your microphone on and share something with your voice, that would even be wonderful as well. I've being able to work at an LEA and now with Region 15, we've heard a lot of our LEA partners say, we want a voice, we want to participate, don't do unto us, but rather, ask for our feedback, ask for ideas. So I'm really inviting everybody on the call today. This is it. It is super exciting. You can tell I'm pumped, maybe too much Dr. Pepper this morning, because I'm really excited that you will have the opportunity to share your voice and go through. So our objective today is to receive that feedback. And you'll see that there's 3 parts. We're going to be reviewing each section. That's going to be a silent activity. We'll be discussing each one of the prompts. And then we have a feedback tool. And it will not necessarily, it won't be a shared feedback. It will be individual. Every person will get to say exactly what they want. On the next slide, you will see that the overview will consist of, for the RAR, 3 different parts. We are going to talk about the discussion prompts, and then there are specific areas, 5 that are listed there, 4 that are very specific, like student and teacher needs, programs and services, and school and other, and then some general process feedback. So the way that will look, and on the next slide, will be exactly what we will do. As we break into our sessions, and there will be a USB member or 2 in each session, and also a Region 15 member in each one of the sessions. We will have the opportunity, so this is the actual instructions. For what we will do is we're going to first stop and read the prompt. We have this created in a Google form, so everybody can access it. It's going to be, I think it's going to be awesome. Super excited about it. And just read and review, reflect, think, ponder even, how does this apply to me? How does this apply to my school system? What does this look like for the kids where I work? And then as you ponder, then part 2 will be the discussion. And it could be 5 minutes, it could be 10, it could be 15. We have some flexibility because we do have a large amount of time allocated to this because we want to hear your voice. So that's, again, one reason why I'm super excited about this. What's helpful for you? What might not be? What might need to be changed? Think about the cycle of continuous improvement. If this works for you, why does it work and how could you use it? If this is not helpful or might not bring value to your local organization, what might need to change? And think about being very specific about that. I would change it this way. I would change it that way. And those are totally acceptable things to do. And also what applies to your context. Are you an urban school? Are you in a charter network? Are you part of a very rural location that needs a different kind of context? Whatever those different layers are that apply to you, please definitely look through this with that lens on and reflect in it. And then we have the opportunity where everybody will get to respond to these prompts. Rather than having a group say, well, what do you really want to say, and only have one person type? Nope, it's going to be every person gets their own voice and you'll get to type. So it's going to be very enthusiastic. Just checking with my peers, I think we're pretty good. What questions might you have before we bounce into our breakout rooms? So as I said, we will have somebody facilitating for you and we can give you more details once we get into those breakout rooms. Tia, what is our question for, in terms of our time? What is our allocation for our time?
Well, we have really until the end of, I would say, until we're done completing the feedback form. I just want to jump in with Becky. Becky, really, I think, with each group kind of working at their own pace, once they've finished working through each of the feedback prompts or just sections of the feedback, I think the groups can be free to leave and go on with their day if that's okay with you. We don't really, the final piece of the session today is just to kind of think about how this might impact your work moving forward. So, but Becky, I want to leave that to you. And you're muted. It's okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I think that would be fine, Tia, because really after the breakout rooms, we just had a slide that said any final reflections and thank you. So I think if people, as they finish those groups, go ahead to leave. And since we're doing that, I just want to take a second to just thank you. This is my last meeting. As you know, I'm retiring at the end of December. It was a hard decision to make and took me a long time. I had to wrestle with that decision quite a bit. But my husband retired from Salt Lake School District at the end of the school year. And so that kind of pushed my timeline up a little bit. I said, no, you can't do that. I'm not ready to go. But as time went on, and he's really enjoying retirement. And I just thought, well, you know, we both got 42 years. It's a long time. It's time to maybe move on and focus on my grandchildren and some other things that I'd like to do that I haven't had the time to do in the past 42 years because I've been busy working. So I just want to thank you. It's been an absolute delight working with you. I've learned so much from each one of you, and it's just been really, it's been an absolute delight for me. Working with each one of you and working with the wonderful people here at USB has been an honor. So I just want to thank you, and maybe we'll see each other at some point in time in the future. If you ever need anything, you can still call me. I'll send out my email at my home email address and my phone number. I'm happy to help you if you have questions at any time. Thank you. I appreciate the little hearts popping up on the screen.
So can I add something? So
as long as you don't make me cry, because I'm already starting.
Okay, well, I'm not going to make you cry. Well, you can cry if you want. So, you know, on behalf of everyone putting in the chat and the team at USBE, you know, it's been a real privilege to work with you as a colleague and learn from you and with you and your dedication to students. And just to let everybody know, in Title III monitoring, Becky has actually said that she's going to join our team to do early childhood observations, you know, because, you know, she has that expertise. And I'm a secondary nutcase, so, you know, she's going to help me. She's actually going to help me a lot. So, Becky, thank you.
Thank you, Christelle. I'm looking forward to that. So Becky Peters has set up some breakout rooms. So let me just explain to you what those are, and then you'll see those pop up in just a minute. So group one will be charter LEAs that are located within the Wasatch Front. And in that room facilitating, we will have Tia Taylor and also Christelle Estrada. Group two will be charter LEAs that are located outside of the Wasatch Front. And that will be Corey and Leslie Evans. The third group will include urban and suburban districts, and that will be Erica Skreslet and Val Murdoch. And then group four will be the rural school districts, and Ann Hearn will be there as well as myself. So Becky, are we ready to go on the breakout rooms?
And as she's getting us ready,
Okay.
Erica popped in the feedback form in the chat. So if you guys want to go ahead and click on that to access it, to bring it up. And then we will have, as Becky said, facilitators in the room to help guide us through the conversation. So we are really excited for your feedback, and thank you so much for participating.
Yeah. The room should be open. If anyone has any trouble or needs my help, I could help. I believe I can help assign people as they need.
So Becky, how are we finding the breakout rooms?
Okay, let's see.
I'm not seeing them.
So it looks like if we, on the bottom of our Zoom screen to the right, if we select breakout rooms, you'll see the names, the header names. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see the room,
Okay.
and then we'll join that way. So.
Okay, there they are. I was looking in the wrong place.
And for those that have to jump off for a minute and come back, just go ahead. I think Becky Peters will be in the main room to help you get back to the room where you need to be. So
yeah, and on my screen, there's my toolbar, my Zoom toolbar is actually up at the top of my screen, and there are 3 dots that say more. I had to open that, and then it brought up the breakout room. So if you're looking for it and not finding it, that's how I found it. So whether it's at the top of your screen or the bottom, That's where you'll find breakout rooms.
All right. We'll see you all in there.
So I think we're waiting for Tia, as well as when I'm looking at, I see district people in, which actually this I think is for charters within the Wasatch area. So I'm not sure.
I'm still having a hard time finding where to get mine. I'm supposed to be in rural schools, Chriselle, and I have my screen open and
So, yeah, did you check like breakout rooms, and then it'll actually have the title, and then you have to go to the right of the title. And
where do you check out breakout rooms? I see participants chat, share screen, record reaction.
Uh-oh. So you don't have the breakout room
Yeah.
logo?
Arlene, I could put you in there. Did you say
That'd be
you wanted?
great.
Okay, you said you wanted the rural?
Yeah,
Yeah.
rural.
She's rural. She's wonderfully rural.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, great.
Thanks, Arlene. Thanks, Becky.
Christella, I have a question.
Yeah. Hi, Sheena. How are you?
Hi, good, thank you. I'm just wondering which area I'm in. I don't know where the Wasatch thing is. I don't know where that is.
Oh, I think it's just around the Salt Lake area.
Oh, so I'm in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
So am I'm number one.
Yeah. So you're in the right place.
Okay, great. Oh, so I stay here?
Yeah, you do.
Oh.
This is charters in the like Wasatch area. We have Gateway Prep. Hi, Bridget. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I was hoping I was in the right place because I didn't hit like join or anything. So when you said charters, I was like, okay, that's me.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So why don't we do this, because we don't really have Tia here, who's supposed to be the facilitator. But let me see. So why don't we go around and introduce ourselves related to the charters that we represent? Because I think we're missing quite a few. Like we don't have Entheos or Endeavor. Okay, so Bridget, why don't you? Well, first of all, I'm Christelle Estrada, and I work at USBE with Title III, and oftentimes Title III is connected to Title I, obviously because Title III accountability is in Title I. So that's my role. I don't actually see the other people who are supposed to be here. But why don't we just go around and introduce ourselves? Because I know people are having trouble getting into the right places. So Bridget, take it away.
Okay, my name is Bridget Childress. I'm the Title I coordinator at Gateway. This is my first year. This is my 27th year teaching, but I've never been in this role. So I'm learning all about this side of it. So I've been in intervention and resource teacher and classroom teacher, but now I'm kind of on the administrative side. I never thought I would be in this type of position, but I'm ready to learn more about it and to do what I can to help our school.
Thanks, Bridget. I appreciate that. Sheena, why don't you go next?
Well, I'm Sheena Eliza, Director for Pacific Heritage Academy, and I've actually been in Utah for about almost 3.5 years, and one of those years was a COVID year. So I'm still trying to figure out where I am. So please excuse me. And I've been in education for the last 30 odd years, and most of it in Hawaii. So we moved over from Hawaii to here. And so now I'm at Pacific Heritage in Salt Lake.
So Hawaii, did you see all of us drooling? Or is it like
No, it's really good here. You don't want to do what Hawaii has to do.
okay, good. That's wonderful. So Missy.
I'm Missy Mackey-Whiters. I'm with the Salt Lake City School District. I'm the Title I director and everything else, PE and athletics.
So Missy, it's really, you know, I have a huge history with Salt Lake. I was a director there. And you want to be in this group because
I don't know that I just thought I'm also over COVID testing for the district. And so I was talking to the nurse and so next thing I knew I was right here. So I don't know why I'm here.
Okay. So Becky Peters, Missy needs to be with the districts. I
know. I wondered why I could hear all these things with the charter schools. So,
well, you actually have a couple of great charter schools, but
yes,
we need to get Missy with the districts.
Okay.
I actually was. I had my histories in charter schools until I came over here to Salt Lake. So, all right, thanks.
You're welcome. So we have a couple of other people. So Chance, could you? I don't really know who Chance is. I know, it might be someone from a charter, obviously. And then we have Anna Lynn and Randy. So who would like to introduce themselves? And Renee Medina is really wonderful. Both Becky and Renee are at USBE. So Randy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Randy Hilligram with American Preparatory Schools, Title I Director. I have been here since May, so very short amount of time.
Well, it's really wonderful to meet you, Randy.
Yes.
Anytime you need help, you should always just email me.
Okay. I appreciate that because I can use it sometimes.
Well,
there's a lot in Title I.
Yes, there is. So how about Chance and Anna Lynn? Okay, so I actually don't have access to the individual Google Doc where people are supposed to respond to the prompts. So Becky, do we have that?
Yeah, there was a link for that. Let's see.
And Anna Lynn is saying that her camera and mic aren't quite working. So that's good to know. Okay, so based on so let's do it kind of an informal thing, and then I'll kind of keep track, and we'll use the Google Doc, after we have a conversation. So I don't think you need to really worry about any of this. So based on what you saw related to the presentation from resource allocations, let's just have a conversation about it. And it says Becky actually put the Google link and the Google link is actually for individual responses, but we can have a conversation and then you can put whatever you want into the Google link. So based on what you saw as the presentation for resource allocation and the process related to the ESSA expectations, like, what's your first impression? And there's no right or wrong answer, so you don't need to really worry about it. This is just a conversation. So Bridget, Sheena, Randy.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to pull up that form. Was there a handout? I might have missed it.
No, it's actually in the chat now. So Becky just put it in the chat with the Google link.
Yeah. Oh, the questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Was helpful.
Yeah, I was just looking at it also. Is it, so it says like initial discussion prompts. Is that what we're looking at right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Because all of this is so new to me. I don't know what to share.
No, that's fine. You don't have to worry about it.
Okay.
So now Wendy just joined us, but she's with Canyon School District. So Becky, she needs to be with the districts. Okay. So since you're pulling up the questions, Bridget, do you want to just, again, they're just prompts for conversation.
Okay. So I see it says, okay, describe the LEA resource allocation process or method to implement the LEA program or to departments, programs, and schools. Describe the school level resource allocation process or method to implement the school plan. Describe the LEA and or school process to monitor progress to ensure student outcomes are improving. So, I mean, where I'm at in this, I'm working with a team of specialists. We all kind of have our focus. One is for middle school. Then there's a couple for primary. There's math specialists. There's the language arts. We've been trying to put together an intervention program to support our students who have these needs. But this year has been difficult for us. We've had a death, we've had pneumonia, our team, we've had people leave and we've had to substitute. So I guess I'm just kind of giving an overview of where we're at, because when I look at all the technical components of Title I and having to deal with all the paperwork and the applications, I mean, we have a great administrative staff that's helping with all of that. And our previous Title I director, has everything in place. It's overwhelming. We want to work with students and we have all of this to do also. So that's kind of like where we're at.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good observation in relationship to the way in which you're evaluating programs, right, and filling out applications for funding. Right. But then the way in which you allocate resources needs the kind of support that helps you connect it with what students, the impact on students. So I think, your observation is really important. And so the question again is, like, what do you think of this most recent process done by West Ed and the Title I team and the school improvement team to try to support that without having another burden? So that's for all of you. But again, Becky, Wendy Dow needs to be in the district because she's from Canyons.
So are we talking about the pie that they just explained to us?
Yeah, the whole process of, the way in which you would look at resources related to generating, the actual method for what you're actually saying. So how is it that you actually decide the way in which resources are aligned to student needs, and then how do you evaluate the program's effectiveness? Because you don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, and then you don't see the results for students, So what Anna Lynn and Randy and Sheena, what do you actually think about this process of resource allocation? Because we're kind of in a really different environment in relationship to post-COVID. And I know people always say, it'll get back to normal, but I actually don't think there's anything. I mean, that whole thing about getting back to normal doesn't really make any sense to me. Because if we haven't actually learned anything from this really traumatizing experience for teachers and students and schools, then, and we keep doing the same thing we've always done, then the whole process of evaluating the way in which you're allocating resources, you know, is kind of a waste. So what do you think about the process, about how it was laid out in relationship to allocating resources? Anna?
Maybe if I can chime in, Christelle. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Sheena, we can hear you.
Yeah, I had a question on that only because we've got a lot of resources allocated to Title I schools, right? And if you're in the different categories, whether it's CSI, TSI, or the other one, you get different allocations. However, what I'm finding a little bit challenging to navigate through is that they're all there for the same purpose, but they all have a different flavor of the same message. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because I think what the resource allocation is trying to do, which we'll actually put in the Google Doc as well, is exactly what you're saying. So, so the question ends up being how you braid funds in a way that it's actually meeting the needs of the students without doing all this hoop jumping in relationship to separate, right? The separate funding stream. So that's kind of what you're saying. How does everybody else feel about that? Because it's a really critical question. Anyone? Anna, you were like shaking your head.
So I apologize that I missed the first hour of the meeting because I was putting out a fire. So I don't want to, I feel bad entering a discussion that I don't necessarily know the background of,
So,
but
Anna,
I'm just.
Can you introduce yourself? Because like.
Oh yes, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
So I'm from Early Light Academy in South Jordan. We're in Daybreak, the Daybreak community. And I think people were saying a little bit about what they do at their school. I do lots of things. Charter schools have lots of hats. I'm sure you guys know that. So I was just the literacy director. Now I'm also the assessment director. This year, they thought it would be great for me to be the Title I coordinator, which I'm like, okay. So I'm learning all of those pieces, but I do naturally do a lot of the Title I jobs is what I'm learning. I'm also over the new math Acadians. I am not a math teacher. I have no math background. So that's been new for me and the teachers. So lots of fun things. Oh, and I'm also an instructional coach. So that's another thing. So lots of jobs over here. But so that just goes with what I was doing this morning. I think what we're really struggling with to go with the conversation is just helping our teachers understand that the things that we're trying to do for them and do with our students as far as getting back to pre-COVID standards and accomplishments is, I think it's really falling on weary teachers and weary ears. The resources and the funds and things I think we are finding are great and beneficial, and we're able to get a lot of supports put in place, a lot of materials put in place, a lot of options, but we're really having motivational problems with our teachers. We're really having a lot of, I guess they've lost sight of what we used to do, what best practices used to look like, what we used to accomplish in a day, what we used to do to help our students get to that great academic performance. I've been putting together a lot of historical data to help our teachers understand what we used to accomplish when we did things with fidelity, what we used to accomplish when we had a great scope and sequence put together, what we had a great school day, what a good school day looked like when we did, good things from beginning to end. I heard someone say when I popped in the first time, and I'm sorry that my text just doesn't seem to be working great today. Someone said they've had teachers leave. We've already had teachers leave and give up on this year, which is then again, traumatizing for our students because they've left really young classes. And that's hard. That's hard for kids because they again feel abandoned. There's been a lot of abandonment issues and trauma issues in our school. So just, I think all of that has just been like the perfect storm. And like you said, I don't think we will ever get back to that normal. Because everyone says, when will it be back to normal? There is no more normal, right? There's no more normal again for school. It's getting to a new normal, I think, is really what we need to have be the goal. Anyways, if any of that made sense. So
Yeah, thanks, Anna. And I know some people were kind of shaking their head in agreement. And when I've been visiting schools, high schools, elementary schools, teachers, I was at a high school recently where the computer science person, he left after like a month. And so, and then they can't find replacements or substitutes or anything like that. So Randy, do you want to jump in relationship to this? So we all kind of understand the context, but then the question is, how would this process actually support the things that are actually happening in your school? Or do you not see it helping?
And I apologize. I was actually not on the very first part of this call either. So I'm kind of with Anna there on that sense. I was taking care of some issues. So my director was on and kind of we tag teamed is what ended up happening. So that's why I've been quiet. So I do apologize. But I agree with Anna Lynn what she said. I mean, we're seeing that a lot at ours too. You're also seeing where students have kind of unfortunately kind of during the COVID season, they were kind of teaching themselves in so many cases. And, we know how that goes. So then you get them back into a structured school setting and it's hard on those teachers, very hard because now the kids feel like they are still in control and it's just retraining again. So everything Anna Lynn said, plus the fact that kids think they're in charge. So, so that I just some input on what she had mentioned. And I do apologize for missing that first part of that as well. I was also working on some things that have needed some immediate attention, but and I'm so new to it. So this is all good for me in general. As I said, I've been here. It feels like I've only been here for a short amount of time, I guess a few months now, but so this is all just very good learning for me. So sorry, I don't have a lot of feedback, but I do feel that, what Anna Lynn said is very accurate. Those are just such high issues and priorities right now, keeping people, keeping the motivation for children to want to keep learning and want to listen to teachers to be able to want to stay and not get frustrated. There's just a lot of moving parts and it is going to be a new norm rather than what we're used to.
Yeah, Randy, I think that's really helpful. And whoever wasn't here in the beginning, you don't need to apologize because, the real focus is on what's actually happening in your schools and what the adults need to do to create a safe learning environment. And so, that actually is the goal, to better understand how USBE in this process can help instead of laying another process on top of all the stuff that you're already doing. So that's the piece that I think is really valuable, that the USBE leadership as well as the West Ed people, the kind of feedback that they need to get. Because in ESSA, there's this one requirement related to, which we actually know because we've been in schools, is logical, which is how do you evaluate program effectiveness based on how you're aligning resources, right? So if resources are aligned in a way and we don't see any increased outcome for students, then, teachers actually end up getting, exhausted. Right, because they're working really hard and there's this gap between how hard they're working and the actual results that they see. So that ends up being a challenge.
Sorry, can I chime in there? And I think that's why I went back to the original, the question in there was the LEA resources, as well as like WestEd has done a lot of work all over the world, right? I've worked with them in Hawaii. So we've seen the effectiveness of these surveys, but when it's not a concentrated effort and coordinated and such, it becomes really taxing on a school. So, I mean, what's nice about here is that you can pick and choose. We can say, oh, yes, we want these services. No, we don't. We pull back. When I look at the allocations of it, my question then becomes, if we've got services within whatever designation you're in and your school status, how do we have input as a school to be able to say, can I have this? No, I don't need this because it's duplicating and therefore creating more work for us that we don't need because you're saying the same thing. So if we have, say, WestEd, we've got Ed Direction working with TSI schools, we've got other schools if you're in a CSI school. So in Title I as well, you have those opportunities too. Is that correct? So
Yeah.
if you look at the allocations to our school level, we have certain luxuries. We can say what the money is used for. And it's quite a bit this year, and I'm really grateful for it because with that becomes stronger programs, stronger training. And then like Randy was saying, I think Anna Lynn was saying, was that now it comes back to remembering how to do school and getting our norms to the new norms. So when we come back and have a look at how our schools are and our students' outcomes and how we're progress monitoring it, tons of support from the state when it comes to letters, when it comes to, what's the other one? Oh, different programs, core curriculum. They've given us heaps of opportunities to pull in new curriculum, how to progress monitor, looking at Acadians, amplify. So for the elementary, the younger grade levels, it's been really good. So I think my only question is when we look at the allocations of the funding is that we have a look at the menu and then we see what the needs are with the guidance of the state, because I really like that. I like the guidance there. But we just don't want to have a duplication of different programs no matter what status we're in, because we've got the trifecta. We're in CSI, TSI, and Title I. So with that comes a whole lot of supports. And what I guess I'm trying to say is that in our plans, we're making progress. There's no way that we're not going to make progress, even coming after a COVID year, because that, like we've all been saying, has been super challenging. It's been hard getting our kids in. Attendance has dropped. We're still trying to figure out how do we do attendance, how do we get their progress monitoring done, how do we teach to the strategies that for, now we've got all these ELL kids coming in, we've got refugees that are now coming in and expecting Afghanistan kids. To calibrate all of that has been a challenge, and because we wait for the state count, and Title I is based on our lunch apps, right?
Yes.
If we're looking at that from the year before, but we've got this influx of kids that come after count date, is there a way that we can have a look at our count date as well to say, oh, we need another recount and perhaps another allocation coming in? So two things going on with the TSI, CSI allocation and the count date allocation, because we've got so many ESL kids now.
Yeah, so the thing that's interesting about that is they used to do the Title III allocations like in June, but then it didn't really account for what happens between October 1 and December. So then I ended up, and I don't know if Title I can do this, but I did this with the accountability people in our data section and had them look at go back to the October 1 count and then go forward to December to actually see what the difference was in relationship to allocations. So we've tried to do that instead of, always focusing on the October 1 count without really understanding the differences between what happens, in December and then in June, because oftentimes there's so many students who aren't accounted for in the June count because of what's happened from December to June, right? So that's what, and I'll have to check with Title I to see how they actually look at the count in relationship to, students coming in, especially as you said, with an increase of students learning English as well as, our Afghan families who have been traumatized in their own country. So these issues are really important. How else can you provide me with feedback to actually give to the West Ed people and the Title I people? Because I'm connected to them, obviously, and I've been on this team. But I've said this whole thing is interesting because you're making a point about all these designations and labels, right? So CSI, TSI, turnaround, and all those designations are created based on certain ways that calculations happen. So I think that is the point in trying to figure out how to align those resources. So Anna, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I really appreciated everything. And I think it's Sheena. Did I say her name correctly? I really appreciated everything that she said about the influx of the population that they are dealing with and helping. We are clearly on the very other end of the spectrum with our population. It's interesting though, because of the, I think it's a gift, that the meals have been paid for and free for everyone for the last couple of years. But because of that grant that was provided by the USDA, we have actually had such a struggle with getting accurate counts of getting our low income numbers correct, because where families are hit with food, that really is the one place where we can actually get our families to fill out our low income forms and get an accurate count of that population, that true population that we do have in our schools. Interestingly enough, we had our ELL population, which was pretty much non-existent until this year, skyrocketed. This is the first time that we have anywhere near 10%. Just in, we had basically nothing. I had 2 kids I was monitoring just as the assessment director. And now all of a sudden we have a need for an ELL specialist in our school. And that's just a new challenge that we're having, and balancing and trying to get teacher resources and things. But then again, with that, we're not getting our forms filled out. We're not getting an accurate count of the family needs, and not getting a clear indication of who has internet services at home and who has technology and who has, that just sort of the things that our community, I think, has taken for granted, of just assuming. I think our teachers assume that everyone has technology. They assume that everyone has internet at home. They assume that everyone has someone there to help with homework. They assume. So we've just now started a math tutoring club after school. We've started, there's all these things that are just so new to our population, that we're having to meet those needs and think outside the box and try and figure out, how we're going to be creative without the funds, because we don't have the proper identification, I think, due to meals being free, right? Because the food is taken care of for anyone and everyone, which again, I love that they are, because I know our population needs it, because again, food is where children get hit hardest the first, but at the same time, it's been really, really difficult for us to get that accurate count, because our families won't fill out the forms. Just an example, I know I have a family that can't afford an advanced placement exam, and yet so we're having to come up with an alternative sponsorship for that, because I can't go the route I would like to with the AP College Board, because I don't have the documentation. So just things like that, right? that because no one's doing the paperwork or the things. So just new challenges, right, that have come because of COVID and things that have never been in our community before. So just a few other things there. So
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a really critical issue in relationship to resource allocation, which is when we actually get identification of enrollment counts and based on categories and what that actually looks like. So this is an ongoing issue for the data and statistics team at USBE. And so this is something that I've been harping on. So I'm actually grateful that you're saying these things. And we have 2 new people come. So Linda Gardner and Lisa Brunson. And I think this is kind of like a strange, breakout room carousel where people.
Yeah, this actually isn't a breakout room. It's the actual main room.
This is the main room?
Yes, yeah, it's the main room. What I can do, Becky Donaldson popped out and she was asking if I could help move you guys to room 1. So if this would be a good break, I can go ahead and do that.
Sure, you can move us.
Okay, so hold on.
Well, thank you, everybody. And you should call me. Right, call me, email me, text me, whatever you want.
So, yeah, I should be getting